Hi, this is Stephen Brower from Irvine Community College. This is for CSIT 256, Computer Architecture and Assembly Language. And this is the overview for Irvine Chapter 10. The two primary things we're going to be looking at in Irvine Chapter 10 are struct and macros. So in terms of, at a high level, the struct and the macros are the two things that we are going to be looking at. The struct, remember writing classes in Java, and there were fields that the class had. So there are these private variables that you would create up top, and then when you created an instance of the class, you would go through methods to access the fields that the object has. Well, a struct is something that will let us create a set of fields that are related, and then we can create an instance of this collection. And the term that's used in assembly is that a record would be an instance of a struct. So there's going to be a separate video that's going to go in a little more detail on the struct. One thing I do want to point out, though, is so here before the data segment, this is where that struct for car is being defined. So here are the three fields that will make up that record, or actually will make up that struct. The records are these two right here. So car1 and car2 are each of type car. And then this is, and this syntax, which has the less than greater than, has the initial values. So car1 is a 72 Trans Am. That's not moving. Car2 is a 65 Shelby. That's moving 40 miles an hour. There's another demo that then looks at an array of cars. And so what we have here is that this car list, which is of type car, there's 10, and we duplicate these elements. I'm sorry, there are going to be 10 elements, and this is going to be the default value. So I just made everything a 1910 Model T. Okay, so again, there's going to be another video that will go into the struct. Macros. And there's two aspects of it. One is writing macros, and the other one's using the macros the author provides. So, So for writing macros, now this top part here is not in my demo, and when I edited it in, it threw off the line, so the line numbers are off. But what will be in the demo is the use of a macro to call this procedure. So I have a procedure, display signed int array, that expects three parameters, ESI, ECX, and EDX. And if I were to call that procedure, I would have to load the three registers and then call the display signed int array. What a macro would allow us to do for us writing a macro, I could write a macro that will do the calling itself of the procedure. It would have parameters that it would receive. So text, address, and item count would be three parameters it would receive. And then using those parameters, it would then load the appropriate registers and then call the procedure. And so now the call of the macro is easier than the call of the procedure. And so to put it side by side is, without using macros, then this is the call to my display signed int procedure. But using the macro that I wrote, then this is the call. So it just makes it easier that we can call the macro, pass in the parameters, and the idea of having these things on the same line are just easier, more convenient for us to do. Well, guess what? The author has macros. And I'll just jump back here again. The author has macros. There is an include file. And if we include the macros.inc file, then we can use the macros the author has provided. And again, there'll be another video just on the macros. But to sort of plead the case, if we were calling read string, the procedure that the author gave us, we'd have to load EDX with the offset of the string, load ECX with the length of the string, and then call read string. But if we include macros.inc, so we have the include Irvine 32, if we include the macros.inc, then calling the read string, mread string, first name. That's it. And it takes care of the setup for us. And as you'll see later, for writing a string, we can do mWrite string and then just in double quotes put what we want to display. And this is usually the point in the course where people start yelling at me. And then that's when I tell a story from a movie, which is probably not appropriate for me to go into, but by having you do the offset of a string for many times leading up to this point, at least we got into what an offset is. So there's a method to my madness, pun intended. Anyway, so that's the highlights of Irvine Chapter 10.